Okay, here we've got a Pro Series vac meter, and it's going to be very similar whether you have a chain drive or cable drive system, but this one's actually a Pro Series. As you can see, it has a small hopper on it. Go ahead and open our door up, and on the inside, when you get the meter, or if you're checking your planter before you go to the field, you want to check these rubber seals. A lot of times you'll get little cracks that develop in the corners, and that lets your vacuum escape. So you want to make sure that this seal is on. You know, it's down in the groove, and it's you know, good, nice, and pliable. It's not really brittle as they'll get over time. This is the bean sweeper or wiper that they call it. Now, if you're running a Pro Max 40 disc, you'll have one of these little knocker wheels to install. To change those out, and you want to put this back in for beans, there's a little Phillips head screw right here. Just simply loosen that screw. You don't have to take it out, just loosen it. And then this will slide over. You can see the notch. This will slide over and come out. Then you'll put this in, and it also has a notch in it. It'll sit down in there, you cock it over, tighten the screw up, and you change it out. It takes about a minute to do it. This is the Pro Max 40 disc, and this is what we recommend for planting corn. It is a 40 cell disc. So in comparison to a lot of the 30 cells that are out there, the old Deere 30 cell disc, it's going to turn a lot slower, so it's going to be a lot less susceptible to speed problems in the meter. These are just stirrators. They just keep the seed down in the seed hopper stirred and agitated. And notice there's no cell here. It's a flat disc, so you're going to have to run quite significantly more vacuum than what you've run in the past with a cell disc. You're probably going to be running in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 inches of vacuum, depending on your seed size and your conditions and how much seed you're planting, how fast you're planting, things of that nature. But somewhere in that 12 to 15 is going to work sufficient for a Pro Max 40. Now, if you're running a cell disc, that's going to be very dependent on seed size. It could be dependent if you're running the small corn or the standard corn disc. Depending on your seed size, it could be anywhere from 6 inches to 13 inches. So this one makes it a lot easier to set. You get it in that 12 to 15 inch range of water, and it'll pretty well be set where you need it for vacuum. Now, a couple other things to note in here. There is a seal right here. That is important. Make sure that seal is there, and again, to make sure it's not cracked, make sure it's not brittle, make sure it's nice and pliable. When you install the disc into the meter housing, you want to make sure that when you do that and you spin it, after you tighten the notch, when you spin it, it should spin, you know, just about like so. You don't want it to be super tight, but you don't want it to freewheel either. If you need to adjust that, you'll pull this key out right here. You just pull that pin out, and then you'll turn the hub in or turn the hub out, depending on how it needs to be oriented. But it should be a nice firm turn. It should, you know, it may have a slight little bit of drag. It shouldn't be sitting there rubbing all the way around, but it should have just maybe a slight little bit of drag, but it should not freewheel. This is the corn brush that's currently installed in the meter. Now notice there's 2 steps here for the corn brush. When you go to soybeans, this is the soybean brush. There's only 1 step right here. Take that out, you just slide this out like that, slide the new one in. So pretty simple to do that. This is your double eliminator right here, and when I put the disc in the meter, it should cover approximately, this last step should cover approximately 40 to 50% of that. The easiest way to set those is get a 3/32 drill bit, slide that 3/32 drill bit in there, tighten, just snug the opener or the eliminator down to where it's touching the drill bit. Take your drill bit out, and it's set. You're going to do that the same whether it's the Pro Series is a little bit easier to do than the Maximerge, but they're both set the same way. 3/32 drill bit should be contacting the last step out here. It should be contacting the very last step with a 3/32 drill bit. Now, a couple other things to kind of note. This does come out, this back housing, this cover piece or clear cover piece. Once you get the planter in the field full of corn, let the planter down and pull forward a few feet. And what you want to look in here for is you'll be looking at the seed side of the disc, and you should only see one seed per cell. If you're seeing a double, especially once it gets over here past the double eliminator, you want to make sure that there's only one seed per hole when you're looking in there. This brush, all it really is a baffle. It just keeps seed from just free falling down the seed tube. Over time, it'll get a notch worn in it, and you could possibly see seed trickling out, so you want to make sure that this brush is in good condition as well. That's going to take care of the inside of our meter. Here we're looking at the outside of the meter. This is our gearbox that comes from our cable from the front, and this little knob right here, if you remove the cable with this lock right here, you can turn it to unlock, slide the cable out, and then pull this off. Now, if you want to turn the meter so you can see the performance on the inside, like I said earlier, we could take this out. We can look in there and we can see if we have single seeds per cell. If we've got a double on a Pro Series, here's our adjustment right here. Again, we talked about having that 3/30 seconds clearance in there. To lock it, once you get it set, just flip this little lever out and that'll lock it. Flip it to this position to adjust it. Now on a Maximerge unit, you'll actually adjust it from the inside of the meter. There'll be a little thumb wheel right about in this area. This hole will not be here, so there'll be a little thumb wheel in here. You'll orient the disc in a certain way, use a screwdriver to set it based on that little thumb wheel. But on a Pro Series, it's all done from the back side. When I get done with my planter at the end of the year, I want to take my discs out. Don't leave them in the meter over winter. What I want to do is I want to store them in a vertical position, whether that's back in the original box, or what a lot of guys do is they get an old garden hoe handle and they'll slide these discs on that handle and store them in a vertical position like that. The other thing you want to make sure and do is try to keep it in somewhat of a stable temperature area. The worst thing you can do is either leave them in the meter or throw them on the bench like that, because what will happen is they'll warp. So you want to kind of put them, if you put them in the basement or in the garage or something where it's somewhat stable temperature, and store them in a vertical position. Now we're looking down inside the seed hopper on a Pro Series. I've removed the lid from the top of the unit. This is an air screen. It draws air in this portion and then draws it into the unit from there. Just make sure that this is free of debris. It's pretty easy to remove and clean. This is the seed. This is where the seed is delivered. Now this will not be full, because as seed is delivered from your central fill unit, this tube will start to fill up, and once these air holes are covered from the inside, I no longer have airflow. If I don't have airflow, I'm not going to have seed, so I'm not going to have a lot of seed in the seed delivery tube. So you'll probably have anywhere from a 1/16 or less of a bushel in this meter at any given time. So you won't have a lot, so clean out's pretty simple. On your Pro Series meter, the shear protection on the meter, if you get a rock or something in the meter and would lock it, is this black plastic flower looking thing here, this knob. There's a hex piece that runs through this gearbox, so if something would get lodged in here, it will actually break this plastic knob, and that's your shear protection for your Pro Series. If I want to remove my Pro Series unit from the row unit, what I need to do is right now it shows a picture of a lock. I want to flip that lever to the unlock portion of it. I'll release my latch right here. Then what I'm going to do is this cable will slide out. So I just lift up on the back of my Pro unit and I'll pull it off, and that cable will come out. Now when I go back, I'll put the cable back in here, and I may have to turn this knob to get the cable to start once it starts. Now don't lock it before you get it back on. Get it put down in place, then make sure it's in there, turn your lock, and you reinstalled it. Okay, here we are taking a look at the gauge wheel. The gauge wheel is your depth control for your unit, and it determines how deep your unit's going to go in the ground. Your gauge wheel, the way it's set up, there's a lip here, and what this lip does is it maintains and helps kind of form that seed trench. So you want to make sure that it's good shape. If this is starting to get worn down to where you don't have much of a lip left, you're going to want to replace this gauge wheel. You want the gauge wheel having just a slight amount of contact with the opener, up to maybe a 1/16 of an inch of gap, but when you raise that thing up or you spin that gauge wheel, it should have light contact with the opener. And what that's going to do is that's going to keep your lip free from debris, as well as help keep debris off of your opener as well. To adjust that, you loosen this bolt, the outside bolt, and you're going to put a wrench on here, and you're going to turn this other big nut on the inside, and that moves this assembly in or out based on how you need to adjust it. Now, you can get it too tight. If you get it up there to where it's pretty hard to turn, what that's going to cause is going to cause bulldozing, and it'll just start plowing on you, and it'll start, especially in conventional till or really nice soft seed bed, it can cause bulldozing on you. Now, adjusting your depth, you use this T-handle right here, where all the way forward is going to be your most shallow, all the way down is going to be your deepest. A lot of guys like to start with four notches showing on each side. Some guys run 3 and 4, but again, that's going to be based on your personal preference and what the field conditions are like, how deep you want to actually plant. Now, each time you make an adjustment, if I leave this side alone and I bring the other side up, I just adjusted it 1/4 of an inch. If I adjust both sides up a notch, that's a 1/2 an inch of adjustment. So that's how we're going to adjust our gauge wheel and maintain it. I want to talk a little bit about the shank itself. The shank is the foundation or the backbone of your row unit. Now, on later planters, they've gone to a cast material, and it's a 2-piece material. As you know, cast is pretty hard to bend. It's either straight or it's broken. On earlier planters that were metal or were sheet metal or weldments, you want to check that shank and make sure that this portion of it is not twisted, it's not bent, it's not angled. Turning in the ground a lot of times can cause this. About the only way to really check it is to go out before the season, let the planter down, and pull forward, and you'll be able to tell if you're getting a nice true V trench. Because what can happen if this is twisted, not only are you not going to get a good trench because it's running at an angle through the soil, but also it could be orienting the closing wheels over the top of the trench. So a couple things to check there is just make sure that your shank is straight, and again, about the only way to check that is go out in the field ahead of time, let it down, pull forward a few feet, and look at the development of your trench, and make sure that your closing wheels are lined up over on the sides in a square fashion. Okay, we've removed the opener from the shank, and you'll notice on the inside I've got several shims here. There's a nut that the shims are in here, you slide the opener on, and there's a nut that holds the whole assembly on there. Now, as the openers wear, to maintain the contact we talked about with the 2 pieces of paper, you can remove these shims and put some of them on the inside and some on the outside, and that will allow these openers to squeeze together. Now, keep in mind, if you move 1 or 2 shims or 3 shims on this side, you want to do the same thing on the other side so that it is centered on the shank. The thing you don't want to do is take 6 off of this side and none on the other. So just make sure that you keep that even as you're adjusting your contact as your openers wear. Here we're taking a look at the closing wheel assembly on our row unit. Now, our closing wheels, all they're really there to do is just firm that seed trench, and but you don't want it running right on top of the trench that your openers are made. If this assembly is not adjusted square with the opener, these closing wheels can be running too close to the center and can be packing your seed trench. Now, the only real way to be able to check that is actually get it out in the field, let it down, pull forward a few feet, and then look and see how the gauge or the closing wheels are oriented based on the trench. Now, to adjust that, you got a bolt on each side, and you'll loosen that, and then there's slots in this casting, so you can pivot that. You can pivot that closing assembly to make it to where it's centered over that trench. Now, also some other adjustments that you have, the gap between your tires down in here, if you're having trouble with root balls or something of that nature, you can add spacers in here. You can also stagger your closing wheel. There's another set of holes where this bolt goes through. You can move this tire back to offset that, to let that residue flow through there a little bit easier. Here's your downforce on your closing wheels, and this is just a float position. Really, you just have the weight of the casting. Your first notch, most guys run in the first or second notch because, again, you don't want a lot of pressure on that unless you're in really heavy no-till. Then you may want to increase that pressure. But in most cases, for conventional till, you want to be careful because, especially in wetter conditions like we've seen the last couple of years, that can start packing that sidewall, and you can lose some of your emergence. One other thing on your seed tube, if you're getting erratic or low population or something on your monitor, one thing to definitely check is run a bottle brush or a seed tube brush through these seed tubes, or run it over that sensor aggressively. Now you'll probably do it from the bottom, so you don't have to take the seed tube out. Just raise the planter up, get down on your knees and behind, and then just stick that bottle brush up this end and run it that way. That's the easiest way to do it. A couple other things to make sure, if you're getting a lot of talc buildup or you're getting a lot of seed treatment buildup, if you're getting seed treatment buildup, you probably need to increase your talc usage. If you're getting a lot of extra talc buildup and that's causing problems, or if you've got a finger pickup and it's graphite, you may have to cut back on that a little bit. But graphite seems to be probably worse about causing sensor issues more so than talc. Now, a couple other things with these clear seed tubes, there's a couple things that can happen. If it's a bright, sunny day, light can shine in here. That's why this sticker is on here, to try to help prevent that. But if you get a really bright day and the sun is behind the planter, light can shine in here and it can kind of cause issues, especially if it's also dusty, or if there's a breeze behind you, it can blow dust back up that seed tube, and that can cause erratic seed tube issues, sensor issues on your monitors. Just a couple other things to be aware of, and some things that you can check on your seed tubes if you're getting monitor issues. Okay, here we've got our seed tube removed from the shank assembly. We're looking at the seed tube sensor. Now, one thing you want to make sure, before you start the season, make sure that your seed tubes and your sensors are in good condition. We talked about earlier about the bottom wearing on your seed tube. But one thing you want to make sure is that your seed tube sensors are also in good condition. If you remove your seed tube and with it still plugged into the connector, and you run a brush down through there, there's a little LED light on here on the later model seed tube sensors that should light up. If you run something down through there and the light comes on, wave a wire or wave a stick or something in there, that LED should come on, and that tells you that your seed tube sensor is in working order. The other thing you want to make sure, and I've seen this happen, there's two little black and red wires right here. They're tiny. When you insert that into the shank, if those begin to get worn, they'll start to wear on the shank if it's inserted incorrectly. And in some cases, even if it is inserted correctly, if there's some slag or something left over from the casting on the shank, if those get worn, it will ground out your seed tube and can really cause some monitor issues that are a lot of fun to try to figure out. So make sure that these are not shown anywhere, or any obvious show that they've been rubbing on the shank. This seed tube is the clear seed tube, and it is a flat surface, so there's no lip. There's no lip or anything where the sensor attaches, and that's just going to allow for a nice smooth transition from the meter to the trench. Now, installing your seed tube, again, here's the little hook that we talked about that goes right here on the shank. There's a roll pin right here, and that hook should be over the top of that roll pin. And then on this model and later model seed tubes, you'll squeeze these two tabs together, and then you've got these little tabs right here that go in the holes in your shank. Now, on some seed tubes, on our earlier model planters, you had to actually squeeze longitudinally. On the seed tube, you had to squeeze it this way, and what that would do is that would draw that in so you could insert it in there. These are a lot easier to do because you can push it down in there and get it hooked, and then move the tabs to get it oriented correctly and latched in place. Okay, here we're looking at our seed tube as it's inserted in the shank. Now, when you insert that in the shank, there's a little L hook right here, and that little L hook is going to hook on a roll pin right there. A common mistake that's made when you insert a seed tube is you miss that pin with that hook, and then your seed tube can get in there and flop around, and you'll have pretty inconsistent spacing. The other thing that happens is dirt and debris builds up in behind here, and as that happens, it makes it harder to get that in there. So you may have to take a screwdriver or something and clean the dirt out in behind that roll pin when you reinsert that seed tube. Now, a couple things of definite importance. At the seed tube down here, your seed tube guard or your frog protects the bottom of the seed tube so it does not wear against the dirt, it doesn't wear against the openers, because as these wear and get thin, they'll start to wear right here and they'll get thin, and you'll have a little hole right here. The other thing you may have, which doesn't allow it to go directly in the bottom of the trench, it can come out the side. The other thing you'll get is you'll get little plastic shavings that are still attached, and the seeds will hit that and bounce as they are approaching the bottom of the seed tube. Now you want to make sure that this is in good condition, because if this starts to wear too much, your frog, then what will happen is your openers will get into the side of your seed tube and start to wear it out. Or as debris is coming by, it can also wear the bottom of your seed tube out. So check your seed tubes every year and make sure that they're in good condition and they're not getting thin in this area, or they don't have a bunch of little shavings. Here we're looking at our seed tube guard, or what a lot of guys refer to as the frog. Now what that's going to do is that's going to keep your seed tube oriented in the center of your openers. Also, it's going to protect from rocks and other debris if they get in here, to keep it from damaging your seed tube. Now, some of the older, this one actually, if you take the other opener off, you can cock it to the side and slide it off. Some of the older ones, if you've got a few years older planter, there'll be 2 roll pins right here. And what you want to look at on those roll pins is make sure that they're not egged out, so that this thing can get in there and go back and forth and actually get into your seed tube. Now the other thing you want to look at is, as this wears, as you start to move your openers in, you're going to start pinching against this frog. There's quite a bit of slop in here on a new one, but as they wear down, you can get, and these can start to wear. As these wear, this acts as kind of a scraper on the inside of your opener to keep dirt and stuff from building up in here. And again, it also just keeps your seed tube centered in the shank, and as well as protecting it from breakage. Here we're looking at our walking, what a lot of guys refer to as the mustache. What this does is this allows your depth to be maintained constant in uneven conditions. As one gauge wheel goes up, this will pivot one way or the other, and then that will hold the other gauge wheel down to maintain your depth, so your row unit does not bounce near as much. Not much maintenance here. Just make sure that they're there and that they're free before you go to the field. Sometimes over winter these things can get stuck, so you just want to make sure they're nice and freed up so that they can work. Also, on some of the older planters, they did not have this little stop right here, and what can happen if that is not there, if you hit a big enough bump, this thing can flip up and go vertical, and then it will miss this arm on the opposite side, and then your gauge wheels are not working together at all, and you actually have no depth, and it's going to go as deep as possible. So if you don't have this on your planter, that came out, I'm going to say in early 2000s is when they started putting those on like that. So check your planter. If it's an older planter, you can install these. Just simply take the bolt out, put the new mustache on, put your bolt back in, it'll fit right on, no problem. This is a fixed scraper. There's a spring in behind here. These are pretty aggressive and do a great job of keeping, in wet conditions, of keeping it clean. They also make a rotary scraper. They make a metal and a plastic rotary scraper. Those also work well. We use them for years. The problem with those is it seems like they seem to wear out a little quicker than what these do, or the little plastic wheel would come apart. So this is kind of what comes on planters anymore. You can change them to the rotaries if you prefer, but just make sure that these springs in good condition and that you do have contact, whether it's a rotary or a straight scraper, with your opener. Here we're looking at the unit mounted coulter. And most of what we're going to talk about is probably true for combination row cleaners or row cleaners as well. The main thing to note here is as this coulter, when you install it on your planter, you want to make sure that it is not running at the same depth as your opener. In fact, it needs to be at least about a ½ an inch or so above the bottom of your seed trench, because these waves don't form a very nice true V. Really all you're wanting to do with this coulter is just cut the trash so that the opener can come through and not have to worry about hairpinning and that kind of thing. But with row cleaners or coulters or a combination of the two, you want to make sure that you're not running at such a depth that you're disturbing the seed trench that the openers are creating behind it. Here we've got our row cleaners on the front. This is a combination unit with the coulter as well as the row cleaner. And you'll notice back in there's a grease zerk on the row cleaners, and that's probably a daily zerk that you want to hit that. Here's the pin set up. You've got several different settings, and you can also set it to a float position so that they will float. With a row cleaner though, you just want to make sure that it shouldn't be turning 100% of the time. You don't want it plowing and making a trench. because that will allow water to stand and can cause emergence problems. It just to be knocking clods and root balls and things like that out of the way. So that's your row cleaner, but just make sure you grease that Zerk every day.